Oh yeah, it does that sometimes. Okay, we should be live here in about 3 seconds.
Not yet.
Okay, we are live. Welcome everybody to our monthly book club. This month I have with me Agata and James. Hi guys.
Hey, y'all.
Hi.
And we are going to be discussing the book, The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion. And let me, before I forget, the book that we're going to be discussing next month is called The Self-Esteem Workbook. And it's by Glenn Schiraldi. So if you're interested in either of these books or any of the other books that I recommend or that we talk about, there's a link below. Let me double check. Yes, there's a link below in the description that says recommended reading list and randomness. And it's amazon.com/shop/thrive after abuse. And you can see my little Amazon store. It is like an affiliate thing. So I do make some money off of every sale, and that just goes to support everything here. So that's that. And the book club happens. It's the last Thursday of every month. We normally start around 6:30. So welcome everybody.
We normally starting at 6:30, but we really wanted James to be with us from the very beginning. And
Yes.
James has a job.
Yes.
So it's not Dana going late.
In terrible
Yes.
traffic.
In traffic, life. Well, I guess
Good
let's.
time to practice mindfulness, though.
Yes.
Yeah, really.
Safely.
Right.
In New Jersey, you have to practice deer mindfulness. Like
yeah.
Deers, gosh, crazy.
Same here.
Yeah.
Let's see. People are hopping on. We have Kevin, Chris, Trappa, Martzia, Denise, Sense TV, Daniel Ray, Tanitria, Kamami, King. Welcome everybody. And let's see, I guess let's just jump into it. The book. Okay, so this book, The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion, is about, shocker, both mindfulness and self-compassion. And we were, Agata and I were talking about this earlier, about how to even begin to cover this book, because there's so much information in it. And it's definitely, I think, a good overview. I think that's what we landed on, right? It's a good overview, especially for beginners. If you have any questions really about meditation exercises or kind of what self-compassion is, what mindfulness is, this book is a good place to start.
Yeah.
So what did you guys think of the book?
James, you wanna go first?
No, you go first.
Oh gosh. Well, I'm a Christian.
Okay.
So it was so funny for me because I went some of the concepts there, I did study some Buddhist, I do like information and especially like philosophy of Buddhist, I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Always when I read a self-help kind of book about being mindful, for some reason my brain just goes into, yeah, but that's in Christianity, you can do it this way and this way.
Mm.
So I have been having those moments here when I was kind of feeling why do you need all this extra? Because for me, it was all about really having grace to yourself and really loving yourself and accepting who you really are. And giving, one of the things in the, in those meditation, you say those things to yourself and may I have compassion, or may I have peace, may I be healthy. And I was thinking, for me as a Christian, I remember that moment when I was giving myself permission to really enjoy who I am, because God made me wonderful. And so I don't know, for me it was just this is so extra. I loved it because it's really filled with information and addresses so much about meditation and why does it work, which was really interesting to me. But I would not be a Buddhist, I have to tell you that. So
did you feel like there was a conflict with understanding the concepts because it was more okay?
No, it's so funny. Actually, I think there was no conflict. I think it's almost in a and I've never studied deeply Buddhism. This guy apparently did study like it for years. I never done it. I basically learned a little bit about it, and some of my friends are Buddhists. I kind of observe, you know, their practices and stuff. There is no conflict, but there's just so many, all the different ideas that I kind of felt like, and it's so funny because I think Buddhists claim they simplify things, but I think they're more simple for me in the Bible. Like, but I grew up Christian. So for me, I have this tradition, and I can say like that filter that it's familiar for me to understand it in that way. So I felt like they make some of the things a little bit more complicated to me. They don't have to be that complicated. I don't know. That's what I felt.
Okay.
But
Okay.
it was good. It was interesting, and I think it's helpful. Some things are very helpful.
James, what did you think?
I like it. He actually does mention the very beginning of the book that it's not a religious thing at all. It's like completely, or it doesn't have to have a religion attached to it. It can just, because I felt kind of the same, Agatha. At first, it was kind of like you cringe because you don't want to go against. I was born and raised Catholic, so at first it felt like going against basically everything I've learned in childhood and Catholic religion and stuff. But I like the book. I I knew meditation a little bit before because of the Calm app, but this has helped to kind of improve my knowledge on it.
Okay.
To me, it's more like it's less like a book, it's more like a manual on how to be mindful and how to meditate more effectively and stuff like that. So I like it. I think it's cool.
I go after, that I almost felt like this would be way more beneficial if instead of the book and those exercises, being stuck in between a bunch of this information, they were like mini videos with instructors on a YouTube. Like I felt that would be way more beneficial to people, honestly, because they very freaking good exercises with very good instruction. Did you guys do any exercises? Because I kind of did. It was fun.
I did a few, and you're right. So just for those watching, there's a whole section in the book where he goes through all different kinds of meditation exercises with getting in tune with your body, with learning how to ground yourself, with breathing exercises, like just body awareness kind of stuff. And I was thinking the same thing, Agata, about these would make for some really great videos to just really walk a person through, because it was such a long section. Yes. And there was so much information in there that I think it would be really easy for a person to skim over,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, well, let's back up a little bit and talk about what self-compassion is. And he said a couple different things about it that I really liked. And he said, self-compassion, I'll move my computer. Self-compassion isn't a gift we are born with. It's a skill. It's giving ourselves the tenderness and care that we would someone we care about. It's self-kindness in motion. And he also says self-compassion is the foundation of compassion for others. It helps us to better empathize with others as we aren't so absorbed in our own suffering, because we can better relate to our painful emotions. And I thought that was a really interesting way of understanding self-compassion. I think he's right on about that. What do you guys think?
Well, he kind of later says that compassion is natural, like we all have it. So I was kind of confused here because he said like it's something you have to learn and practice it, but then it's a natural. So it's like I think like we all have a capacity, except I think we should do a little bit disclaimer first here. Like this book does not really addresses your being in an abusive relationship right now. Like I just want to like say it out there, like, because like there's moments when he's actually showing how, like you just said that when self-compassion is really based on compassion to others. So like if you're in a
I see.
if you're in an abusive relationship right now, do not try to base compassion for yourself on the compassion you have for the person you are with right now, because that's not going to work out well, I guess.
That's a really great kind of disclaimer or like added comment.
Yeah, let's start there.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that, but you're right, because so many people, it's so funny that I didn't even think about that, because that's one of my top concerns with so many of these books.
That's why I went back there. I was
yes, thank you.
Wait.
You know, because people they'll read, we all do this, right? Like we'll read a book through the lens of our understanding of like what's going on, like who we are in this chapter in our life. And that's the danger, I think, of a lot of like the relationship self-help books is it's only, it's meant to be understood that this is only within the context of a normal relationship that might have some minor issues. It's not we're not talking about being in a relationship with an abusive person of any kind. Right. And
so someone let me just answer one comment here, because it's really cool that Buddhist Trappa Skunk said Buddhism is fundamentally atheistic, so I can understand how there can be conflict. That being there is nothing wrong with finding knowledge from other traditions useful and applying them. So here's the great thing about that comment, because Buddhism is not religion, it's only a philosophy. So it's just a way of understanding and looking at life. So yes, it has, like, for me, it's a Christian does not create any conflict, or for any other Christian here in this community, or Catholic, or like Jewish person or Muslim, this book will not create a conflict in your faith. It's because it's not related to what you believe in. This is just a way of kind of looking at certain things in life, like suffering, acceptance, compassion, just like basically like doing yoga is okay for Christian, because, you know, it's a great exercise. Meditating is great for Christian, or, you know, so it's a philosophy. But going back to disclaimer.
Well, and you know, I will say too, every time we do bring up religion, I always get some people that are really uncomfortable with yoga or with certain practices and anything that even like walks the line of being Buddhist. And I just, to those people that are watching, I guess what I would just hold on to what helps and let the rest go. Like Agata was saying earlier on, you know, she understood a lot of this book through her own lens of Christianity. And I do think that these are some pretty universal concepts that can be understood through the lens of any religion or even atheism. It's just about being in tune with yourself, really, and then being good to yourself.
Exactly.
So then he goes on, okay, so about the self-compassion, he goes on to talk about kind of the whole concepts of pain and suffering. And he says, pain times resistance equals suffering, which I thought
love it. And
I thought that was a great way to summarize that. Yes.
Well, he actually didn't summarize it. This is not his thinking.
No, this is Buddhism. But
I've heard it so many times before in so many different ways. And I was like, kind of, dude, you should say there's some credit to someone for that, because this is not your thinking. But, okay.
Well, you know, that's the pretty much the fundamentals of Buddhism is trying to relieve yourself of suffering, and that, you know, pain in life is part of life, but suffering is optional, like that whole thing. But the fact that he wrote it out in such a nice, clean equation.
Yes.
I really
times zero is zero.
Yeah. And he talks about, you know, that we, with these different emotions, that our emotions, either pleasant or unpleasant, they're there they have a message for us. And it's not the emotion itself that causes pain. It's our resistance to these different emotions that cause pain. And in one part of the book, he talked about, you know, if we don't let ourselves experience grief, that can manifest into depression. If we allow ourselves to experience our anxiety, that can result in panic attacks. Like, the feelings don't go away when we try to suppress them. They just get bigger.
Or they actually keep piling up. Like, and they're like turning like from like something that is easy, like sadness, then it goes into like, you know, the resistance, like anger or whatever. And at the end, you end up with like feeling lots of shame, because, you know, you're still participating in life. And like basically once you start resisting a feeling, you're starting this chain reaction. And at the
Mhm.
end, you ending up with this whole emotional mess and you don't really know how you get there.
Yes. And sometimes, like what you're saying, is this stuff can grow and it can stack on to each other, and it's going to come out in a way, oftentimes in a way that catches us off guard. So it might take a left turn, and the next thing we know, we're a hoarder, or we have a drinking problem, or eating, or shopping, or whatever it is. And
well, I kind of feel like we could actually bring that theory home a little bit to what we're dealing with in our support group. Like, because when we say pain times resistance is suffering, but if you take the resistance out, that means you're not going to suffer. So, being in an abusive relationship, or like being just post, abusive relationship, dealing with the breakup or being discarded, there is a pain. So like, Dana, do you want to describe more what would be the resistance of that pain and what will be the attraction, so people can actually avoid some of that suffering? I'm putting you in the spot.
yes, let me think. So some of the resistance a person might have, are you kind of getting at like resistance to leaving, or resistance to
Well,
what?
let's say, I don't think it has to be resistance to leaving. Let's like, how would you tell the person? Because if you're not resisting, then you're accepting something. So what are you actually accepting? You're not accepting the abuser, and you're not accepting that they are hurting you. Like, you're not letting them hurt you. That's not the kind of acceptance we're looking for, right? So why don't you, like, I'm trying to have you explain it, because I know you are better in explaining stuff, because I speak and think in Polish. And you know that. So.
Well, okay. Are you getting at, because what you're talking about is,
like, if you can explain our people in a support group, like, so what would it be that, not resisting the pain when you were just discarded by a narcissist? Let's just, pick one situation.
not resisting the pain.
Yes.
Yeah,
I don't know. I think it's hard to lean into it. I think it's hard to not resist it. And there's, like you were saying, acceptance isn't the same thing as allowance.
No, yeah.
So we don't need to accept it to the point where we're staying in a dangerous situation. But I think the challenge is, there's a reason that we tend to resist something, and it's either denial or because to actually realize how painful this relationship is, or that it's not working, is a really hard truth to accept. And
yeah, but the more you like resisting this reality, because that's what it is really, you're not resisting the emotion, you're basically resisting the whole reality. This is not working, this is not healthy for me, this is causing me harm. Like, the more you're doing that, you're not providing yourself with that kindness and self-compassion that can actually help you heal that pain. So like, my way of looking at it was like, so accepting it would be, and it, I think, can look differently for a different person, but it would be that moment when you say like, okay, like, like the anonymous alcoholic says, give me the wisdom to see what I can change, power to change what I can change, right? And wisdom to say what I cannot change, and accept what I cannot change, right? Something.
Yeah.
I totally screw it up, but the idea is like that. So I felt like it's a very similar thing. Like, at some point, like, you can look at it and
you had that aha moment.
Yeah, it's like an aha moment. And in that aha moment, instead of like, if you can use that aha moment to give yourself kindness, so I think it would look like, find the support for yourself. Like, bring something to the situation that will help you deal with it and move forward, instead of, and the first step, it could be what the people doing right now, being in a support group and just talking about it. That is accepting it. That is accepting, hey, my ex-boyfriend was a narcissist. He was a psycho who was only, his only intention were just to use me, abuse me, and, take from me whatever he needed from me at the moment. Just accepting that he's not going to change, right? That's already taking away some of the suffering. Like, I remember biggest source of my suffering, I think, was trying to understand, what did I do wrong? Could I change him? That kind of stuff. So I guess I don't know. I'm just trying to bring it home for what really matters.
Yes,
To people
I
over
agree.
here.
Well, and I think you're right. So the people that do tend to find these kinds of groups, and even what you're talking about, like the acceptance of, okay, this person is just disordered and they're not going to change. I even would say like that's almost a later stage of acceptance. I think when people tend to kind of find their way here, it's more of they've finally accepted that there's something wrong in their relationship and they're searching for what
They're
that is.
not sure exactly what it is.
Right. Is it
But
me?
like,
Is it them? I don't know. Can this be saved? Are they really a narcissist? If they're not a narcissist, does that mean that things can work out? And what's
and
the
to find
difference?
that, it's important to be active in the community, not just
Yeah.
be in it, but you have to, ask the questions you need to ask as many
And
times as you need
and
to
listen to
validate
the
yourself.
answer too. There's the kitty. Sorry.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think a lot of one of my concerns with the support group is, and I get it, but a lot of people, all of us really, whenever we're in crisis, and if a person's not ready to move forward, then what they tend to do is they'll go to a support group or they'll go to a therapist or wherever, and they just need to vent. Like they're just needing to be validated.
Mm-hmm.
But my concern with that is I think there can come a point where we can confuse like activity with productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so a person's like, well, I'm really working on things. I'm going to a therapist. I'm in the support group. And I've been talking about this now for like a year or 3 years or what have you, but there's no forward movement.
Right.
And the reason they continue to go to therapy or support group and talk about this is talking about it feels productive, even though in many ways it's not. It just relieves that anxiety at that moment. And then, so I think it's important for us to realize, and I think we've all been there, I think it's important for us to realize if there's not that forward momentum and to get clear on like what kind of forward momentum
Yeah.
we're looking for. And don't get me wrong, I totally get the need of needing to be validated and heard.
Be
And
retrospective and
yes, just to be heard of like, I am not crazy. Here is my story. Here's what happened. I just need a soft place to land and to just be heard,
Yeah.
Well, it's obviously very empowering to speak about it for a while. And I think there was a moment when, like, I think that's why he put all those exercises in between, because he wants you to also, like, not just understand all the different concepts, but like meditate and kind of keep building up all the awareness, right? And the mindfulness. Because the more aware you are, at some point you will see, hey, talking about, like, one of the things he says here in many different ways is, and I heard it too before, that every practice ultimately fails. Like it works, and then it fails at some point.
right?
And when you are aware, you can catch that moment when it does not work anymore. And in that moment, instead of resisting that's not working, because like I feel sometimes like people try to talk again about it, because they're still waiting for the same kind of experience of this like elevation, like lightness coming back, but it's not really coming back anymore. And then you talk more and more to more people, but it's not coming back. Like it's almost like you're chasing that original relief and it's not coming back. So you have to accept now, hey, this is not working anymore. So what is another way now for me to deal with what's going on right now? What are my feelings? Like all of the exercises are, it's so funny. He's so like, I like Pia Melody more, probably because she more hit it like the nail on the head quicker with it. It's like he's going the same way. Like what is truly happening inside of you, and can you really deal with that?
Yes, I would agree. And I think it's two very different approaches. Like Pia Melody, I would say is more like psychoeducation.
Yes.
So it's all about, she's very cut and dry. And
Yes.
You can say that again.
yeah. And
Not that that's a bad thing.
not that it's a bad thing. I think you definitely have to be in the right
Mindset for it.
mindset and like stage and healing in order to get stuff out of her book, because she's just her books are very meat and potatoes, and she just lays it all out. Whereas this book is definitely more of like like a humanistic type approach where
Right.
he's talking about all of these different exercises and how to apply them, and what you touched on, Agata, about the might have a certain practice of meditation or mindfulness, and then it stops working. And he had said, it stops working because then it just becomes kind of our new normal.
Yes.
And then, but yeah, and I liked that because I think I would have been the kind of person, I don't have a mindfulness or a routine, but I totally, if I did, I would have been the kind of person that once it stopped working, I would feel like there was something wrong with me.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't dawn on me of, oh, no, this is just normal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, need to transition to something else. So, because I would have been that person that would have been trying to intellectualize it and figure out what's wrong with me, what do I need to do different, and
it's with everything like this, like losing weight is the same thing. First, something that works quickly, then doesn't work quickly anymore. So you have to try something else. Like you have to add an exercise, change the routine, start running faster, but less, blah, blah, blah. Like there's so many other different things, but it's all about you being, very much aware of where are you, what's going on, like, and what are you thinking? What are you doing? What are you feeling? And how is that impacting basically what's going on around you? And if you are aware, like you're literally dealing in reality with reality, then you can impact your life. So we have a good comment here if you want to read it, by the way, from Rob B. I don't know if you're seeing it. It's
go for it. I've got some comments after you.
I love this one. And James, you go after me, please. So Rob says that the mindful model, German suggesting a structure to build on stages of internal, external awareness of softening our response to our pain relationship. And I think that's great because pain is just one of those emotions we have. We will like so here's the thing. Life means we're gonna have pain.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what it is. Like you cannot avoid pain. It's not avoidable. Sorry. So basically you need to have a healthy relationship with pain.
Yeah. Bottom line. That's it.
Yeah.
And I think too,
be able to at least deal with it.
Yeah, I think it's just, when we tend to experience pain, because again, this stuff is not taught, people are caught off guard when they experience pain. And we all tend to feel like, why me? This isn't fair. We get upset by it. But really, pain is a very important part of life because it means that we are either growing or that we need to grow.
Yeah, my kid I have a 16-year-old, she comes from school and she's like, something happened, it's unfair. And I could be the kind of mom and tell her, oh, I'm so sorry, this shouldn't happen to you. Yeah, like, do you want some ice cream? Right? And so what I do is like, you know what, I and we've had few of those kind of conversations when, like, you know what, people will hurt you, people will not give a crap about you. There you will always find people who do not care about you, who want just to get what they want, and they don't have to be like abusive, just self-centered, whatever, right? And then you will find those great people and keep those as your friends. By the way, you want ice cream because, as we know, ice creams we always used to feel better in the house for some reason.
Well, but I think it helps to validate a person's pain, right? Of like, you're right, this isn't fair. But the thing about life is life was never meant to be fair.
Never.
And once we can truly understand that of life is not fair, but it's still really good. And there's still so much that we can squeeze out of these painful moments and use it to grow, use it to move us forward.
Remember we talked for a moment this week when I called you about the book, how I felt like narcissists don't feel pain, they only feel pity because like they just don't want to accept pain.
Because they don't want to what?
Like accept pain. They're like, they feel pity for themselves all the time, like just they pity themselves, I felt. Because I think that's what makes them so immature, like walking through life, like never accepting that there was some kind of pain. Is basically like walking through life like a 2-year-old, just resisting reality the entire time and being angry at everyone and just trying to punish everyone because why do I need to hurt at all? Like, I don't know. I just had this crazy picture in my head when I was reading this.
That makes Yeah, that makes total sense. Total sense. And back to the concept of compassion, Trappa says, honestly, she said, or he or she, I'm not sure, says, I was stuck in a toxic relationship for years, trying to be a good Buddhist or a good Christian or a moral person. I thought I should forgive and have compassion. And I think so many people really get caught up in that. And I think one of the main takeaways from this book was, if, it's like the Dalai Lama says, if our compassion, if we're giving compassion to other people, but it's at the expense of ourselves, then our compassion is not complete. And it really needs to be at this level. And if it's not a level of equality, where then it's not even true compassion, it is pity, it's obligation, it's guilt. It's not coming from an authentic place. It's coming from,
one up, one down place.
Yeah, a one up, one down, or like a manipulated place, or a codependent place.
Yeah.
And I think it can really, so I think seeing that, oh my goodness, this doesn't make me selfish to consider myself, and to have compassion for myself, and to understand that we are human beings and we have limits, and to be kind to yourself instead of being there for other people 24/7 and piling on, saying yes to everything because we're not comfortable with saying no. and then holding on until we either explode in a fit of rage, or we just start cutting people out of our lives right and left. And we were talking about that last night, about boundaries and fortressing, and kind of the both extremes, like no boundaries and then too rigid of boundaries. And it just takes some practice with that. But the key to developing a more middle ground really comes from being honest with ourselves, first and foremost, so we know how we're feeling. And then once we know how we're feeling, it's so much easier to be authentic with another person, because we realize what's going on. And
I want to take it deeper. It's first, like, you almost need to define who are you for yourself.
Yes, I think across the board. I mean, my goodness, I think about my life and how many times I've started over with relationships, friendships, careers. And it's all stems back to, I didn't know who I was.
Yeah. If you don't know who you're protecting.
Well, isn't it pretty normal to feel that after an abusive relationship?
Yeah.
To completely have no clue who you are anymore? Or...
Absolutely. But I think most people go through life because, again, there isn't this emphasis on, you really need to figure yourself out before you get married, before you go to college and take on debt and waste potentially 4+ years pursuing a path that you think you should do, right? Like, you've really got to get to know, like, your strengths and your weaknesses and your likes and your dislikes, and what makes you an individual, before we start making like more major commitments, because it's not going to work otherwise.
I have to say something quickly about the comment here. This book is not about quietly accepting suffering. JJ Fox says, I suppose that's why I'm having to quietly accept that as my suffering and find a quiet way to get away from them. I may be seeing it out of the context a little bit here, not knowing all the backstory, but acceptance has nothing to do about accepting the suffering and being quiet or humble about it. We're not talking about this kind of acceptance again. This isn't it. You do not take abuse. You do not let people hurt you. It
doesn't make it okay. It's not acceptable.
Yeah.
Right. And I think there's definitely, there's that time where, a person might be trying, like, they've got to get their ducks in a row before they can actually leave. And sometimes that takes years. And so people, I can imagine, would feel like, I'm just stuck. I'm so miserable. I could just climb out of my skin, but I can't. I'm just trying to get out, and I'm stuck in that suffering. But I think the way out of that is to realize, there's different things that we can do. We were talking about this last night with Bonnie, with carving out as much as
breathing room for yourself.
breathing room, and really making your sanity a priority, even if you can start reclaiming that 15 minutes at a time.
10 minutes in a freaking bathroom, show yourself kindness, like say something kind to yourself. It's like in this book, there's so many little practices of how you can show yourself self-compassion. And it shows the self-care, different practices like hot baths or walk. But like one of the things is like you can, it's so funny. So in Christianity, we call it breath prayers. And here they call it like breath metta or something. When you like, you can like go for a walk and just say like, yes, or peace, or kindness, like that kind of thing. So even if you are right now in an abusive relationship, you can raise a quality of your being, not a whole life, but your being. If you are aware of, how can you provide some self-care to yourself, give yourself some kindness, some love.
And JJ says, if I fight against the abuse gets worse. If I stand up for myself and talk about these things, it's seen as an attack by the narcissist. And so this goes back to acceptance. And this is, and not accepting this mistreatment, it's accepting of it's futile to have these conversations with this person. And
you're accepting the situation as
it is. This is not going anywhere. The more I talk, the more the abuse gets worse. So acceptance of that is realizing that I just can't talk to this person about this.
And my reply to one of his comments was the only way to combat abuse is to leave the abusive person or get away from him.
Yeah.
In a time,
it's never going to get better. It's actually just going to get worse.
Yeah.
Yeah, but once you start accepting the situation that this is not going to change, this can only get worse, and you start showing yourself compassion and kindness, and you give yourself a little bit breathing room, like a little bit of that awareness, you're getting a little bit stronger each time. Like actually those meditations, they can impact that part of your brain that is responsible for future planning. When you're in the midst of abuse, it's very hard to future plan because your brain is like,
you're in survival mode.
You're in survival. Yeah.
You're living like minute to minute.
So meditation, I actually made a note because my therapist showed me that this is how he convinced me to meditate, which I hate, but I do it now. There's never a wrong way to meditate. That's what convinced me to. But there is this, it's called the default network in your brain and dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. I don't know if someone's interested in those terms, but this is active, this is really impacted when we're meditating. And this is all involved in future planning, free association, and mind wandering. So when you're in a survival, you don't have access to just like dreaming about something good. You don't even like, remember when you came out from an abusive relationship, how you didn't know what you want? Because that was like almost never used in your brain. So when you give yourself that space to meditate and you start slowly impacting that part of your brain, I think that this will, you may make up one day and have this aha moment. Oh my gosh, why I haven't seen it before? If I can only do this and do this and do that, I can live in 2 months. Like you will be able to see something you haven't seen before. So that's why I think I'm actually now thinking everyone should find a way to meditate in some way. It changes you. It really does. It impacts your immunity, your whole well-being. They did research about it. I was shocked. I was reading it. I was like, wow, they actually did research and it does work that much.
Yeah. I think it's great to find some stillness in your life. And, another practice that has helped me tremendously is taking time for gratitude. And especially during those times where you feel like your life is just so awful and it's just never going to get better, it really does it helps so tremendously much to start counting all of like the little things that are right in your life. And I had actually messaged JJ back earlier tonight, and I mentioned this. Travis and I had watched this documentary the other day about Mexican immigrants trying to escape the different drug cartels in Mexico, and they were crossing illegally. And anyways, there are these, I had no idea this was such a thing. It's terrible. But kind of long story short, there were these houses. So the cartel or these other people would say, hey, if you give us $5,000, we'll get you across the border. Well, then they'd give them the money. And that's a lot of money. And then they kept extorting money from them. Yeah. And they were housing these people in, be like a normal, like 1,800 square foot house. And they would have like 60 people in there. And it was dirty, unsanitary. And they were basically, a lot of them were, then they would try to get more money out of their family. And then if their family didn't pay, then the men were sold off into basically being work slaves, and the women and children were sold off as sex slaves.
Yep.
And it was just heartbreaking. And I was watching that with Travis, and because we were just getting upset the other day because we're still in this transition period with, after the house fire and everything. And we were watching that, and I just looked at him and I'm like, you know what? We're good. Like, we have a hot shower, there's food in the fridge. We're not fearing a drug cartel. There's no threat of, being sold into sex slavery. There's so many things that are right in our life right now. And so taking time for gratitude for those little things really just can help get a person centered.
Well, I like a lot when you say, there's so much that's right about you, even though it doesn't seem like it. That's good to just say to yourself in your times of I guess suffering, like the book describes.
Yeah, and I think it's just knowing that. And I think once a person really starts getting in tune with their emotions and their sense of individuality, it's so much easier to see what is right about you.
Yep.
And it's sad when people lose that. Like, I think that's just so tragic. And I think that's one thing to really, what we all need to really rekindle of who are you, and to realize that there really truly are so many things that are right about you.
Well, when you're in an abusive relationship, they tend to tell you everything that is wrong with you or criticize you, and after a while you start actually believing it, and it is pretty sad. Even though it's not really
be in this abusive relationship, you would start from loving yourself as a child, but as children we basically are taught how this is not a good idea to love yourself. It's like it's not addressed in any way except don't.
I was thinking earlier about self-compassion. It's like we were taught as kids to give compassion to other people before ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Way easier to do that than to give it to yourself, because you feel super selfish at first.
That's exactly what I was trying to say. I love how you said that though better. Mm-hmm. Yep.
And that's the
Not
problem
better, just different.
For so many people that have been raised in a really dysfunctional environment, especially if it was a pathological environment, where you've got these really problematic parents who really grind their children down. And it's like, any of your wants or your needs or your thoughts or your feelings, if they're different from mine, then there's something wrong with you. You're bad, you're wrong. And the problem is, as a child, we're looking towards our parents for validation of an acceptance. And when a child's not getting that, we're
getting validation when we actually show compassion to others.
Yeah,
we do a lot.
If you're a good
good
little girl.
If you go along,
go along
to get along,
you comply to their whatever demands or whatever it is.
Right, and you quit being a problem.
Yeah, and so then.
And you quit having an opinion, and you just fall into line.
And then you feel great when you suffer, because you should just get used to it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of untangling from the abuse is learning to see ourselves as we are, and not learning to correct the view that we had of ourselves, which was really we took on the view of ourselves from that pathological person.
Yep.
And so if you're learning who you are from a person who hates themselves and who hates life and all of that, what you're going to see reflected back to you is a very skewed version of reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will be very disturbed picture of who you are.
Yeah.
That's why when you start dealing with the, you know, complex PTSD and, you know, healing yourself, that's why it becomes such a great opportunity at the end to really create yourself, you know, as who I want to be. Like you literally pick, you know, the things that, you know, you want to celebrate about yourself, I guess. Things that will make you stronger, make you wiser, make you, you know, just who you want to be, basically. So
yeah. And back to the acceptance part, Dandelion Green says, I needed to accept that I was in an abusive relationship, which I couldn't do at the time. And that's another one of those hurdles
Yeah.
that it takes people a long time to get to that place. Sometimes it takes years. And
And
there's
there's
such
no
a
set time frame for that either, by the way.
right. There's not. And I think it's one of the biggest challenges is kind of the language that people use. They're like, well, you know, things are really bad and this person yells at me and yeah, they're intimidating and yeah, they call me names and they put me down and all of this stuff. But I don't know if I'd say it was abusive. Right. And because we all have this idea of like, oh, if it's an abusive relationship, I'm being hit on a regular basis and it's absolutely intolerable and it's so extreme.
You
And
almost excuse the abuser.
yes.
Or
But the
it's not,
reality,
you pretty much are excusing them.
yeah, you are. And it's even if a person wants to define it as, okay, you're being bullied, you know, bullying is a form of abuse, and bullying, that kind of stuff sticks with a person for a very long time. And it has the same effects as physical abuse and sometimes even worse because it just messes with the person's,
With your
you
psyche.
know, yeah, your concept of yourself and everything else.
well, so what Dandelion said, it's like, I think one of the things from this book, because I want to take it back a little bit, is that you can actually accept things like the mindful path to self-compassion will give you an opportunity to also accept the things that like impact things that, but you cannot change what happened, but you can impact your whole relationship to what happened. So by this acceptance and bringing yourself this kindness and self-compassion, you can actually deal with, you know, yes, I spent 10 years of my life in an abusive relationship. I didn't know better. Like you, like what, and you say it a lot, and I think we teach it to our kids sometimes that like, if you don't know how to show yourself compassion, like if you just keep on thinking, oh my gosh, how was I so stupid? Like you keep just, you know, criticizing yourself and, you know, beating up yourself. How they call it, like you adding up the insult to the
Insult to injury.
Yeah, this thing. Sorry. Yes, I need checks. So he said, well, you know, one of the ways, like there's different techniques you can actually pull yourself out of those, you know, I guess the negative ways of dealing with stuff. And like one is like, well, what would you tell to your best friend, right? What would you tell to your daughter? Or like find the different kind of way of like anchoring yourself in, you know, like what will be the kind way. Like one of the things he showed her, and I think I do it, and you just said that too, like when you focus on someone else's has so much worse, like that can pull you out of that kind of beating up on yourself, like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I making myself wrong? I have two hands, I can deal with it. Like I'm not being in a, you know, sold as a slave right now. I'm here, actually I can deal with what happened to me. Like I also do this one more thing is I say to myself, well, at least I'm alive. Like I survived, I'm alive. So you always find literally like you just have to build yourself like a little bit of ground on that you can stand on. And like you can look around and see like, okay, what can I do now? How can I, you know, how can I, like, I spilled the milk. How can I wipe the milk off the floor instead of like, oh my gosh, I spilled the milk off, I'm so terrible, right? Like, how can you get that milk off the floor, basically? So,
Hey, Diana Pythia asked a really good question. She says, is there some kind of resource or workbook for when we come out of this initially for redeveloping self?
you have developed self already, girl.
Like reconnecting with who you are.
Yeah,
I'm
I
guessing
guess that's what it is, right?
That is a great
Yeah.
question.
So
Um,
after you came out of abusive relationship, you kind of feel like you are fragmented, right? We talked about it a little bit. Like you don't know who you are. And if there is I didn't read any book about it, did you?
I'm trying to think. Nothing comes to mind. I guess what my question would be is I think it depends on where a person is in their healing, because I think there's different like checkpoints a person has to go through. Like they really need to understand abuse and what it is. They need to understand manipulation
Yep.
and what it is and how to steer clear of it.
And then codependency.
Yes, and like the
Love
dysfunctional
addiction.
thinking between, forget, just between the commitment and codependency, between, uh, um, forgiveness and, like, I don't know, like releasing anger versus like uh, tolerating abuse. And there's just so many concepts that are twisted up. And if a person doesn't have those foundational pieces in place, the odds of them getting right back into a problematic relationship are really, really high.
Yeah.
Because there's key personality things within us that we need to get ironed out. And that kind of stuff is so hard for us to see. Not only are we really close to it because it's us, but this stuff really flies under the radar as really good behavior.
Well,
And
you have to kind of learn the hard way.
What we all did already.
well, but I think even then it's when we're being told. I mean, I think back to how many times I just didn't understand what people were trying to tell me of like, oh, this is a problem, or I was like, no, it's not. Like that person's the problem. And it took me decades really to understand, oh my gosh, okay, I didn't understand how to be assertive. I didn't realize that going with the flow was a problem. I didn't realize that I was being people pleasing. I didn't realize that, there were so many things.
Well, you just think you're chill, you're go with the flow, you're easygoing.
Yeah, I thought
You're
that was good qualities.
You try to be normal and fit in instead of healthy, right?
Right.
I kind of feel like probably it's a very personal journey / exploration for every person. It's very individual. And I kind of feel like it has a lot to do with just really asking yourself question, well,
What do I want in life?
What do I want? But it's almost like define your core value, basically. What is really important to you? Like I remember, I think I had this moment, like I can't remember exactly when it happened, but I remember I had this moment. I was, I think, in my basement then, and like going through stuff, and I felt like how the stuff is not important to me, but there are things like I would literally die for. Like, because my life is worth me fighting for that. Like for raising my daughter to be this wise woman. Like I wanted so freaking like certain things that are like calling me into being, basically. Like they I think that's how I say it. Like some things will just call you into being, and if you just start looking for those things and like really defining it, you may really discover who you are, and you may be really surprised. And I think it's a very personal journey.
I took some classes with the Enneagram, and so that it's not really a workbook or a book, but for me it helped to just kind of kick off learning more about myself and who I am and what I like and dislike. So, but I think it depends on the person. I don't think what I use would be the same thing that Dana could use to help her, and the same with Agatha. Am I saying your name correctly, by the way? I'm sorry if I'm not.
Yes, it's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
And dandelion greens. Oh, actually, real quick, the kind of reconnecting to our center. I don't know. I think Pia Melody's work is great. She's got a ton of videos on YouTube. If you look her up, Pia, Piamellody. And I think that's a fantastic place to start because she really spells it out.
Well, Dana will be creating her own therapy maybe in the future based on discovering who you are and core values.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
Well,
maybe.
I think your book Start Here would probably be, I mean, it wouldn't be a bad place to start, you know.
I think if a person is at a place where if they're searching, if they're trying to understand the different terms and
Mhm.
they're really fresh out and confused and all that, I think that book is a great place to start. Yeah.
Right.
And Dandelion Green says, I don't feel selfish, but I do feel egotistical if I give myself self-compassion.
Say it again.
She says, I don't feel selfish, but I do feel egotistical if I give myself self-compassion.
That's the conditioning we get. Yeah, yeah.
It's from childhood.
He addresses it here, right? He does says that there are like, so each of us will have some kind of obstacles in, giving yourself some self-compassion, and it's really understanding on how you operate and what can be in your way. It can actually help you overcome that obstacle. So for example, sorry, I'm gonna make a little noise. Okay, so for example, he says there's like some people can identify themselves more with like caregiver type of a personality, or intellectual, or survivor, or perfectionist, or individualist, workhorse, so like complete workaholic. Butterfly is someone who easily starts some like new idea but then gives up. So anyway, all those kind of types of personality have a different thing they need to overcome. So I think Dandelion, you are very much caregiver, and you are very much focused on making the other person feel better, and that's what's more important to you because you've been trained to that they were being basically is more important than you give care. He said that one of the practices to it's basically like you circle yourself kind of like a back way into this like love circle. So you, by starting meditating on like may they be peaceful, may they be well, may they be compassionate, then you kind of circle yourself in it like may them and me. So like you probably can focus more on your daughters because your daughters are really important to you, or like your kids, or I don't know, someone close in your family. So you can focus on may she and I, she and I. And so then you're adding yourself to it. And that apparently should elevate the guilt.
And I think it takes practice too, of making yourself a priority and realizing that, and I don't know, maybe for me, it helped to realize if I'm not making myself a priority, then I'm not creating these equal dynamics with others. And that's when that resentment and anger and all of these other uncomfortable feelings start surfacing because something's out of alignment there. And so if I want to have a truly authentic relationship with another person, there has to be that equality of I matter just as much as you matter.
Well, that's how boundaries are formed too.
Right.
Through that.
Yeah.
Is that same thing when you are on the airplane, right? When they tell you first you put the air mask on yourself and then your child.
Right.
So that's another way of looking at it.
Yep. I agree. Were there any other points that you guys that stood out to you in this book?
Oh boy.
Yeah, but I can't remember it.
Okay.
Put me on the spot. I may have to pull the book up and try to find it. I don't know.
I have a note that we didn't cover yet.
Okay.
It's how you can practice being, we said before we can practice being mindful in a formal and informal way. I think when we were talking about the DBT, like it was another session, but here he also takes it deeper. Like you can really put all those practices into your day. Like you can go for a walk and practice mindfulness during the walk. he also gives you this really cool idea of like heart breathing, when you like breathe from your heart. And you can like literally just do it to like check in with your body how you feel and like what kind of emotion you have. I thought that was brilliant, and actually did it a couple of times this week. And then there's something else says, oh, I kind of have one of the exercises, how to deal with difficult emotions. I don't know if you would like to cover that, something like that, because it's very quick and
Sure,
it can
go
just
for it.
give people an idea. I actually took it from his website because the guy has a website. He has a whole therapy like he co-created with this other lady.
Mm-hmm.
So here is what you can do when you're experiencing a difficult emotion. It's like a 3-step process of managing it. So first you have to name it. So you're describing the type of emotion you are feeling, and that gives you something you can deal with directly. It's like almost like once you name it, you know it, right? You can deal with it. 2, locate it. I love that one. So different people feel stress in different parts of the body as they brace themselves in the face of intense emotion. I usually tense my shoulders. He could speak about me that. Others feel it in the gut, like the fear is in our gut, right? Or forehead, if we're like worrying too much, for example. Finding this location is an important step in relieving the tension. I can only imagine that it's because you're going to be breathing through it, probably. So then you soothe it. How you say that? Soothe it? Like you soothing yourself? SOOTHE. God, I speak Polish better than English still.
I lost you totally.
What was it? I'm sorry.
SOOTHE. Soothe.
Soothe.
Okay,
Oh,
soothe
soothe.
it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You can deliver compassion to yourself by placing a hand on your heart or your face or your shoulder during formal meditation. So formal meditation, you want to actually take time, stop doing what you're doing and, go sit down somewhere. Or stressful moment in your day. Offering compassionate words to yourself can also be very powerful. So we can say, I'm safe, or just safe, something like that. And I don't know how, but it actually works. I did this hard breathing because I felt like it was like heaviness. I miss my family. It's a holiday time and my family's in Paris. I miss them. So I have this like this kind of like, and I felt like that if I would be resisting it, that would become a depression, like you said at the beginning of our, discussion. So I started doing it. I'm like, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm just missing them, it's just like, and that just changed, that it's easier. It takes the difficulty out of the emotion, and then it just becomes missing them.
Yeah, I think that's so spot on. And a lot of the other therapies, like the EFT, like the tapping therapy, and those, I think that's kind of why some of this stuff works, is it's really identifying these emotions before they become destructive, or even if they are destructive, identifying what do we feel? Is it sadness? Is it anger? Is it whatever it might be? And so let's go through those steps again. So it was identifying the emotion.
Yes.
And it was identifying where that emotion is being stored in your body.
Yes.
And then it was placing a hand on that body part, and then kind of breathing into it, giving yourself like maybe like a mantra, like a 1-word affirmation of like peace or calm or whatever that anchor kind of word might be. I love that. I think that's brilliant. And my guess would be that that's really spot on, because if we can sit with those emotions when they surface, then they don't stay with us. Because at one point in the book, he'd said, when an emotion is released in the body, the mind lets go of it too, which makes total sense. And I think that is the power of naming something.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's so funny. We have so many different, this is what I love about the whole healing I guess, self-help healing enterprise is because there's so many different ways of delivering the same message. Like, we have the emotional literacy with Richard Grannon. Somebody mentioned him in the chat. Yes, he deals with it in his different way. We have Pia Melody, all about boundaries and deal with the emotion are yours. And also she does when emotion is overwhelming, you breathing it out. You're just breathing through the emotion. Now we have this guy here. There's actually, I googled some stuff. There's a couple different therapies that oriented about like core values, mindfulness, emotions, breathing exercises. So you can always find some really cool practices that will work for you.
And I think even the power in naming these emotions, I've had 2 family members in the past, I don't know, handful of months. Both have had major medical stuff go on. Mm-hmm. And interestingly enough, both of them, they, unbeknownst to each other, I was with both of them and we were doing the whole pain scale, like where is your pain on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the worst. Both of them had said it was around a 3 or a 4. And I had said, well, that's actually pretty low. Mm-hmm. So here we are in the hospital due to your pain. So it's got to be higher than a 3 or a 4. And so, and again, like just with my father, it was the same thing. It was like, well, maybe I have a really high tolerance to pain. And it was like, well, actually, I don't think it's a high tolerance to pain. I think you're not aware of your pain.
Yeah.
And then an aha moment I had a little while ago was, well, we've talked about this. I'd been struggling a lot with different feelings of depression. And it dawned on me that I'm out of tune with how I experience sadness. Mm-hmm. Because I kept saying, I'm like, but I'm not sad. Like I feel
I'm hopeless.
Well, and I didn't even feel hopeless. I
remember that, not hopeless, just sad. But
yeah, I just feel like living takes all like this tremendous amount of effort, and like something is just really wrong. But then that was interesting of like, I feel sad for other people and like their tragedies. It's mm-hmm. easy for me to fully feel that.
Because you're a caregiver, right?
Yeah, well, it's like, watching that documentary about mm-hmm. those people that were being sold into slavery, and I'm totally crying, and it just, it sticks with you because it just mm-hmm. hurts so much. But then I'm like, man, I don't know how to feel sad for myself when I experience sad things. So I think the point being, I think there's a lot of us that are really out of tune with our emotions. It's almost like we have a very limited emotional menu. And
yes,
I like that.
There is. Mm-hmm. Sorry, I forgot the guy name, but probably if someone Googles it, they find that there is this guy who created a list of all the different ways you can name your emotions. And I think it says there's like 800 words there. And I was just like, wait, what?
I've seen that, but I can't think of who it is either.
In the book, they say the name of that guy. And I was just like, wow, that is insane. But when we come out from the abusive relationship, I remember at the very beginning, I just felt either good or bad.
Yeah.
Like, that was it.
It's very limited or numb.
Wrong.
Wrong?
Wrong? No.
Wrong or numb?
What's your feeling? I don't know. That's it.
Yeah. We'll have to do some brainstorming, because I do think that would be a good book to write about these. There's so many things, and once you're far enough out of it, you kind of forget mm-hmm. how lost, tangled up in the bushes you really are.
Page 245. It says, who wrote this? Rob is helping us. Thank you, Rob.
Somebody Khan had asked earlier about the next book we're reading, and it's the Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. And all of these books that we've read before, that we've discussed, you can go to amazon.com/shop/thrive after abuse, and you can see my little Amazon store. It's full of recommended reading and just other randomness. My tea that I drink every week that I highly recommend.
I don't recommend Dana Teal try it.
I know she doesn't like it. I just think that's so strange.
I need to try that. So yeah.
Don't try it. It's disgusting.
I got my dad hooked on it. I know it's
I'm gonna try it on the next book club, like live.
okay. You can let us know.
He's gonna join Dana Club. It will be 2 against 1. I will drink my mango tea.
Your mango tea is delicious. Okay, so yes. So Rob, page 245. Yes, this is emotion words, and it's a whole chapter of different words that fall under angry, sad, happy. Gosh, this is fantastic. Apathetic, adequate. He has them divided up into pain and pleasure, power and control, attachment, social standing, justice, direction and focus, desire and interest, safety and security, and miscellaneous. And I have never seen an emotion list carved up like that. And I have to say, I really like that.
I think they said that he used some like words that some people like to like personally use, like squirrely, or like, because sometimes like you like some word means to you like the exact way of how you're feeling because you grew up in, you know, that kind of family, and they said it this way always. So it's pretty good. I heard that.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's helpful. So that's definitely an exercise, I think, for people that are looking to, where do I start? Where do I start with trying to put myself together and figure out who I am? I would say that's one of the earlier steps, is starting to tune into how you feel. And I really love that exercise. I think if that's one of the top 5 things, probably, I would say, takeaways from the book, is the exercise that Agata had mentioned about naming the emotion, getting clear on where am I storing this in my body, sending some breaths to that place, and then kind of making peace with it and sending like an affirmation to it.
And anchors, I think that was like, I have my own of anchoring, but like just, anchor can be an object, can be an activity, and can be a person, I guess, a sentence, but it's a way of pull yourself out of this like emotionality into like, like create a little bit distance. So you are aware, like, I think he didn't say that in this book, but this is one of my practices. I tried not to say I am angry. I tried to say I am feeling angry, because the feeling kind of like gives a function to my anger. Otherwise I feel like I am anger and I'm not. So like the just saying to yourself I am feeling, and one of the 800 words you have in the book can give you access to that mindfulness, that self-compassion, that kindness to yourself, and what's next.
Yes, and Rob mentions the whole concept of anchoring. He says, yes, the story of a client finding a smooth beach stone, a talisman, a safe object to anchor. And so, yes, in the book, he talks about this stone. It's basically like a worry stone. It's a stone that you find and you keep in your pocket, and you just kind of rub it when you're feeling worried. And the whole concept is like you're giving your body, your brain, a way to kind of discharge that worry, that anxiety. And it also helps to kind of keep you grounded.
Yeah, it forces you to stay in the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, and Diana says that she likes the I am feeling, what you were saying, Agata, about the qualifier first. That makes sense. I agree. I think that makes total sense. And it also helps to remind us that our emotions come and go. They're like clouds overhead,
There's just, I don't know, like I love being alive, like so freaking alive. And I think like just getting to that space when you can just get a sense of like, wow, I get to feel that anger, I get to feel that joy, I got to feel that pain, even I got to feel that happiness just because I'm freaking alive. And and giving yourself grace, like that's so this is my Christian way, but give yourself kindness and just hey, this is the first and only time probably I'm alive. So let's go at it and, you know, like learn as much as I can.
Well, it's like you have a whole new lease on life.
Yes, yes,
You
yes,
get to
yes. And
start completely over again how you want to do it.
yes,
Like your
absolutely.
way.
Absolutely. And then all those things that were such a big problem for you, like unpaid phone bill or something, they're so trivial. And because you enjoy yourself and the life so much more, you're finding such a you're such a creative person. You're finding such a creative ways of dealing with things. It's like, I don't know, like life becomes completely different. Like, I don't know, just I love it.
Well, I think it starts to work, right?
Yes.
I mean, we have to, it's sort of like if you're going through life with a shell of a car, but you don't have brakes, you don't have a gas pedal, you don't have steering wheel, you know, you don't have gas in the tank. You're just, it's going to be a very difficult journey. And there's all of these tools combined is what makes this all work. And getting in tune with your emotions is such a big part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And every, you know, every emotion, every feeling is just valid and, you know, precious at some point.
And it's just informative.
Yes.
Right? Like, thank goodness that we experience. We're so used to, I think, labeling emotions as good or bad, and they're not. These quote unquote bad emotions are often the ones that are full of the most important messages. And because we're so used to, like, oh, I don't feel, I'm feeling bad. And so I need to run away from that. And we're resisting it. Right. And so this emotion is growing. And because nobody likes to feel unpleasant emotions like that. But if we can change our relationship with those emotions and realize that they're there because they have a message for us. If we're experiencing pain or fear in a relationship, there's something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Some sort of corrective action needs to be taken. And just understanding, like, or asking yourself, okay, this emotion, what message do you have for me? You know, and it's amazing what that would be, probably a good free like a journal exercise, like a free writing exercise.
Yeah. What's the message for me from the feeling I have right
Yeah.
now? And that's also like, so because I don't know how they call it exactly in Buddhist, I forgot, but like it's almost like you are the space that, like, actually let me say it differently. For me, like, being mindful is all about mastering the experience of being alive. That's for me what it is. So you can, like, all of that experiences, it's basically like this treasury. That's how it's for me. Like, it's this treasury, and you can pick all those things and you can experience all those different things, and each of those things can teach you something else, and they're, you know, give you a different message. So like, and it's so funny because you wake up sometimes and the message is already out there. Like, how many of us wake up cranky?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And it's so funny because if you resist that crankiness, you're gonna carry that crankiness throughout the whole day.
All day long.
Yeah. But if you actually deal with, like, wait a minute, why am I cranky? And you actually think for a moment and you're like, holy crap, I was so rude to someone yesterday. I have to go apologize. And I'm just giving, you know, like, stupid example, but I usually wake up cranky if I did something stupid the day before. Like, I that's how I am, right? I'm a perfectionist. So, you know, I can deal with it that morning, send a text message or something, and the whole day I'm not resisting my crankiness anymore. I'm just like, and this is the beauty of being alive here. I'm next to the next, like, I'm next, there's next emotion for me, next emotion. And it's basically like, it's all those moments filled with those messages from the different emotions that you can deal with and experience, but don't try to hold them to it or resist it, because that's how you're gonna create suffering, basically. That's my understanding of mindfulness, I guess.
Yeah.
Is that why meditation is so great? Because in meditation, they tell you to close your eyes and kind of try to focus on your breath or whatever. And if you have a thought, notice the thought, but just pretend like it's like a car passing by.
Yeah.
And just let it go in and go out.
Yeah.
Same concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're training yourself, like
Yeah.
the more you meditate, the more ease you have with letting go of things and not
Flowing through your
thinking
emotions
Yeah.
instead of
Yeah.
getting in a rut.
We have a question here real quick from Dayani who says, what's frustrating is I have treatment resistant depression. I only feel a numb despair no matter what's going on. How does one focus on an endless and empty emotion? Okay, I will tell you what I have found. I have struggled with depression my whole life. Um, there's definitely there can, for some people, there really is a chemical component to it. And I feel like I'm one of those people. But I did not realize for a very long time that even if you're on antidepressants or you're getting treatment for your depression, if there's so many other things that are out of alignment with your life, if you're in a job that you hate, if you're in a relationship that's abusive, if you don't know how to be assertive, you don't know how to set healthy boundaries, you don't know how to protect yourself, you don't have feelings of self-worth, all of those things, that depression is not going to fully lift until those things get in alignment. And I will tell you, it can feel awful to be like, man, I feel cursed having this depression that just is so treatment resistant and it won't go away. But sometimes that can really even be a gift, because it's your life saying, so many of this stuff is not for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, get into alignment, like follow. It's like your GPS is chiming at you, like turn right, like make a U-turn at the next exit. It just keeps chiming at you until you start making some major changes. It's weird. It took me a long time to connect all of that and to think about the significance of like the holistic part of our life. So I would strongly encourage you to be honest with yourself. And that can be really difficult because, like we were talking about, there's a reason that we're resisting so many of these things. But if you can start becoming honest with yourself about what's truly not working, that's a big first step.
I want to challenge that. I think we only think it's difficult. I'm sorry, James. I think once you start getting in alignment with yourself, you actually find how joyful it is. I think it's only difficult first because we just don't have any practice in doing it. It's like you can just go and run 8 miles run right now. But once you start, it's easy.
Yes. And I think, and that feeling pulls you when you find your flow, when you find that thing that just juices you, whatever it might be playing guitar, it might be cooking, it might be running, it might be whatever, writing, whatever it might be that's pulling at you, even if it's, we don't have to do like a whole 180 on our life. Like Agata was saying, we don't have to go from like couch to 5K, like we can start by kind of figuring out what juices you, right. And then moving in that direction of experiencing that feeling of what it feels like to be in alignment, of this is my authentic self and this is how I'm expressing it, and it feels really good. And once you get to the place where you're used to feeling good, then you're more in tune with how it feels when you feel bad.
Yeah. Well, the depression that is drug resistant, I was administered antidepressant a while ago and they did not make any difference for me. It just didn't. So my depression was definitely just, as a result of the abuse and, having a quality of life that just wasn't working for me, I guess. And that, like right now, I think once in a while, I do feel like I'm out of alignment. And usually it is when I, like, you really explain it very well. It's when I know I'm doing something that's not good for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
or something you don't like and you're doing it anyway to appease somebody else.
Yes.
And we're trying to make peace with it, right? Like we hate our job, but it's like, well, I've got to pay bills and nobody really likes work. And you're trying to convince yourself that the situation's tolerable when it's not.
So it's not really depression then. What at the core of it is I do not like myself right now.
Well, it's unhappiness.
Yes.
but then that resistance to it, it grows into a
Into
depression.
depression. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like, I was like, when we were talking a couple of weeks ago, you were telling me how you felt depressed, and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like, because for me depression manifests as numbness, and I don't care. And so that was for me resisting. I miss my family. So each time when you are, and and I was not in alignment with that because I don't want to admit it, right? So like, if you have a depression that is not changing, when you have a medicine for it, I would really did some, soul searching for myself and see, like, what can I provide for myself to make myself feel better, slowly and build up.
Yeah.
So
Yep, I would agree. I think a more chemical depression, from like what I've experienced, is sometimes, I mean, I've had a lot go on like in the past forever, but probably definitely the past 6 months, and it's just been stacking up. So it's definitely situational, but I feel like, sometimes there is more of like a chemical component, and I don't realize, because I'm out of tune with how I'm feeling. Like, I tend to not realize that things are really bad until they're really bad.
yeah.
And that's something that,
And I know some people that use it's just a chemical imbalance. It's like an excuse or like a denial, rather than just dealing with whatever the underlying issue is.
yes,
That was harder.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people with a chemical imbalance, and I'm not discounting that.
Mhm.
I'm just saying, I think some people use it as a cop out.
Oh, I agree. I mean, for decades, I would get on antidepressants on and off, on and off. And
It's a Band-Aid.
yeah, and because I was so out of tune with the things in my life that weren't in alignment with me. I had gotten so used to numbing out and trying to make unacceptable situations acceptable.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like walking around with a nail in your shoe or a nail in your foot. Like, it's amazing the stuff that you can get used to. You just numb out to it and you don't feel it. And that was where I was. And it's just really been recently where I've started to realize, oh my goodness, like, I wasn't giving the weight of certain situations the significance that they were.
You normalize the unhealthy, right?
Yes.
Like a form of denial, kind of.
Yeah. I didn't realize the connection because I was so used to kind of just sucking it up and moving forward, and that I wasn't taking time to just acknowledge how I felt about things. And I really feel like, especially after reading this book, I think there's a lot of validity in really getting honest with myself and labeling these emotions. That is so freaking hard. Like Dandelion was saying, she was in an abusive relationship. It took her a long time to come to that point.
Mm-hmm.
It can be really hard to have this realization of, wow, this person's not the friend I thought they were, or this job is sucking the soul out of my body. That's a hard realization to come to, because then it means we have to do something. And change is always difficult and uncomfortable. And sometimes it can seem easier in the short term to stay in a situation and just numb out to it, but it doesn't work in the long term. Like, your body's going to keep letting you know.
I think that's when your bodies keep telling you, that means you are really deep into resistance already.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it'll just keep getting louder and louder, and it'll start signaling in other ways. And I think it's no coincidence that there's such a high rate of inflammatory diseases and cancer and all kinds of things in survivors of abuse. And I think that stuff is just, it's so pushed down, it's finding its way out. So.
Hey, Dana, Con P was trying to find your list of all the books. And is it Amazon.smile.
Oh,
Thrive After Abuse, or
Amazon.com/shop/thrive after abuse.
Okay. I'm putting it in the chat right now.
Okay.
Yay, Jane.
I don't know if you'll be able to.
There is a really, really cool question here from Rabbi. What do you all think about the concept of sucking it up? Is it some innate fear of the strong will survive and the weak will perish?
I think it's a societal thing. Especially as a boy growing up, you're taught to suck it up and rub some dirt in it, or
Yeah.
Take it off.
that's just my opinion.
Well,
yeah, I agree. I think, with Agata, my grandparents were immigrants. And so my guess would be this is very similar for you, Agata, but it was definitely the mentality of if you don't suck it up, like it was all about survival. Like if you need to work 3 jobs, if you're not working 3 jobs, you're a bum. If you're not seriously, like
no, I get that. Yes.
Yeah, you get it. Like if somebody got sick, you still carried on. Like there was no sympathy. It was like, well, I don't know. I'm sorry you don't feel good. Like get up and help out. And
I didn't take
unless you're in a hospital,
for like 6 years.
Work.
Yeah. The concept of vacations was. My parents never took vacations. My brother and I were just talking about that the other day, like how we want to change that and really make that a priority. And so all of the like self-care was definitely not taught. So I think there can be like a cultural component to that. And I think there can be a financial component to that. And there can definitely be a gender component to that. And I think like James was saying, it's more boys are raised like boys don't cry, you suck it up. You got to be a man, these kinds of things. And it separates people. If any of those factors are at play, it separates them from their emotions. And it's destructive.
Yeah. We have many weird saying out there in society that just excusing unhealthy, like justifying unhealthy.
Well, and men are also taught to not be as expressive with emotion and, stuff like that too, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, like suck it up, sticks and stones, this whole thing. What doesn't kill you make you stronger. We have so many dysfunctional messages out there. Like I was just thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad because it all shows like it's like looking at the message from the book is about giving yourself self-compassion and kindness. So if you are growing up believing that, stick and stones, can break your bones, but words can never hurt you. If someone says something nice to yourself, you have no opportunity to give yourself compassion and actually feel the pain because you shouldn't. Because that didn't happen. It shouldn't hurt you. Like it shouldn't, right? So suck it up is the same way. I think it's a destructive thing because if you are dealing with something and you have difficulty, instead of sucking it up, you should be able, to allow yourself to feel the difficulty and ask for help and give yourself like what you need in that moment to.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like you're accepting the abuse.
That's what we are conditioned to.
Yeah. And if you don't tolerate it, then there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right. Because there's this idea of
against the grain.
Right. There's this idea of like, well, everybody else can do it and they're fine. But the reality is they're not fine. Like, people, they're going home and they're drinking or they're numbing out with drugs or they're cheating on their spouse or they're spending money they don't have or they're doing all of these things to handle their pain because this whole conversation about emotions and how to honestly acknowledge them and how to work through them and to get ourselves into alignment with our authentic self and moving forward in a way that's right for us. Like this stuff it's not taught to the level that it should be.
Well,
so, okay, let me just recap. So the book we're discussing tonight is The Mindful Path to Self-Compassion. And it's by Christopher Germer. And then the book we're going to be discussing, what is it? Next December? Oh my gosh,
I know,
December.
Right?
Yeah. December. The last Thursday of
We're getting older. Yay!
No, for real.
It's the most wonderful time of the year.
Yes, it is. The last Thursday of every month, we do book club, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And the book we're discussing for December is The Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. And you can find any of these books, Amazon.com/shop/Thrive After Abuse, if you're interested. So
the book club will be between Christmas and New Year. It's going to be very fun time.
I have to look at my phone and see what.
Yeah, check if you're not traveling, people. Maybe we have to get a new date. I'm available. I know that.
December 27th.
Yep.
And I will be traveling, but I can do book club when I'm there. Not a big deal. So, okay. Well, that's all I have. Is there anything else you guys would like to add before we go?
I'm sorry I talk so much again.
Sorry.
You're fine.
That's literally the point of book club. That's to talk. I don't know who it was. Rob has been on it tonight in the chat.
Mm-hmm.
He said big boys don't cry, but it made me think of, love hurts, and the whole BS idea beside, with that, because love does not have to hurt. And it probably shouldn't. But we're taught for some reason, I guess in movies and Disney or whatever, that love is supposed to hurt and be tough all the time.
Yeah, if you really love a person, you'll suffer for them, or you'll give endless second or 20-second chances, or love. If it's really love, it'll blow your heart to pieces, and this kind of stuff. And it's like, you're describing an abusive relationship. Like, that's not love, that's trauma bonds.
That's why I like to ponder, like, what's healthy love for me, like nourishing. Like, I find different ways of describing it, because like, even when you look at the concept of healthy, like, healthy means so many weird things now. So like, you have to define what healthy for me means. It's nourishing, it's empowering, it's something that brings something good to me and makes me better.
Well, and that's what matters, is not what society thinks healthy is. It's what you think healthy is, and what you need and what you desire in another person.
So this December, we all could, give ourselves a gift of defining what's healthy is for us, and, what celebrating means for us. Like, don't go with the flow. You don't have to spend money you don't have, and just, make yourself feel better about it.
Join the rebels.
Yeah, just do your holidays, whatever you're celebrating, in the healthy, moderate, your own way, empowering you way. I don't know. I guess that's my wish for the season for everyone.
I think, yes, we know what's healthy. Healthy is synonymous with nourishing.
Yes, nourishing. That's my favorite word for healthy now. Yes.
Yes. I mean, it's so true across the board when you think about it. Like, and so Dayani, this is something for you to think about, especially of when you're figuring out, okay, what does kind of juice me? And you're exploring these hobbies and you're trying to kind of figure this out. Think about what feels nourishing for you, what puts a smile on your face, or you feel like your heart is smiling. Like, it feels really, really good.
Yeah, I think it's kind of fun to discover again what you really like to do, and no matter how weird people may think it is.
Yeah, that's the cool thing. Like,
very validating.
Yeah, it makes you. Like, I was watching, I watch a lot of like the Joe Rogan podcast, and I was watching this episode the other day, and I was thinking to myself, he's had this amazing career. He was an MMA fighter. He was a stand-up comic. He's hosted a TV show. He's done all of these things. And I was thinking to myself, and he was talking about his comedy bits and how he would have all this anxiety about writing them and then standing up and doing this. And I just kept thinking, like, man, that really takes such courage. Like, I can't even imagine.
Is that the guy that did the Fear Factor show?
Yes.
Okay.
And I kept thinking, like, oh my goodness, that would be so stressful to feel like you're being pulled to do something like that, to be like a stand-up comic. Like, that's a really hard path to go down. And
he never shows it from what I've watched of him.
I had to juice him. It had to.
Exactly.
I mean,
Must
I
have
think
been.
it pulls you.
Pulls
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
And what a great thing that we're all so different, and that there's people out there that really, it juices them to be a stand-up comic, or it juices them to, I don't know, be an architect, or to like,
Like the people that wash those windows, like those in those tall buildings, like I don't know why they want to do it, but some people just love doing it. Like it always.
It's like that. What's that show where they go? It's the boss, like the CEO of the company goes undercover boss. Did you guys ever see the one with the guy that cleans the porta potties? And he
no.
talks about how he like loves his job. It's like heaven to him every day.
But that's
Really inspirational.
James, like I'm paid, but my other thing is I clean houses and I organize, and it's for me it's like a freaking playground every day. Like I love to do that. I think
That's
I would
the
be
dream.
actually insane if I haven't been doing it. Like I love it. It's fun. So
That's the dream, though. Do what you love.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if you can't do it full time, carve out time to do it. Because, it's like the saying goes, something along the lines of like, we're meant for more than just to pay bills and try to diet.
Amen to that.
I feel like if you love it and you put your all into it, eventually it can become a full-time thing.
I agree.
And not a job or whatever, like a traditional job.
It's something that just continually juices you. Even a bad day of doing something you love is better than a good day of doing something you don't.
Because there will be pain still in life anyway. So at least do something you like doing while you deal with that pain of living, right?
Yeah.
And life's too short to not enjoy every day.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna die.
I was going to say, then we'll end on a high note, and then you dropped that bomb. So,
I don't know what happened to me, but when I turned 35, I had this couple months when I was terrified of dying, like really freaking present to my mortality, and I hated it every second of it. I was like, I like being alive. Why do I need to die? That's so stupid. We should just be, forever. And then at some point, it just became like this. And then we're gonna die, and it's just so comforting to me now.
There's no getting around it.
I'm gonna die one day.
I guess I find it really motivating.
Yes.
Like since we had the house fire, and I feel like I almost died in that situation. It's like, there's things I want to do. Like I need to get on it. Like I need to get these books out. I need to really double down on what I'm doing, because you just don't know when you're going to go. But there is kind of this sense of, so there's that sense of urgency of like, you get one shot, like we're here, and make your life count.
Yep.
And it motivates you. But then at the same time, it's also kind of freeing of, what, like in Buddhism, they talk about, it's like there's this saying, it's like, oh, relax, everything is on fire. It's true. It's like, what, this is all, we're living in this moment, but it's already, it's all impermanent.
It's all temporary. Yeah.
It's all temporary. Like it's all borrowed. We think it's this illusion. We think we own stuff. We think that things are more permanent than they are, and they're not. Like Travis and I, we live in a house that's 100 years old. And you think about all these people that have lived in there before that are gone. Like, like it's just weird. It's all impermanent. And then we're just kind of visitors here. And then we go wherever we go after we pass on. So, yeah.
Depending on what you believe.
Yeah. So with that said.
Now that we talked about death and destruction and chaos in the world.
I need new glasses. I can barely see you. That's why I'm doing this, I think. Because I think.
Oh, did I just do that?
Glasses. I'm like.
I was trying to get close to the microphone.
Okay, guys. Well, good deal. Thank you, everybody, for Agata and James for joining me tonight. It's a pleasure as always. And we'll be back next month for book club, December 27th. I think we figured out. 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for the rest of you guys, thank you so much for being in the chat. And for supporting each other and just being here. So, yeah. So lots of love to you guys. You are not alone.
Uh-oh.
You are not crazy, and you really can move forward and heal from this.
You got this.
Yes, you got it. I love it, James. You're right. Okay, take care, guys. Good night.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone. Thank
Good
you.
night.
Oh, that was funny.